Hey everyone, it's Kevin. I just created this new piece in Blender 3D to celebrate hitting 15K on my channel, which is absolutely crazy. Thanks so much to everyone who's supported me so far. For this, I wanted to focus on geometry nodes and grease pencil. If you don't know what those features are, geometry nodes is a new node system within Blender that allows you to create procedural and complex graphics, objects, particles, and more. And grease pencil is an object within Blender that allows you to draw in 2D but in 3D space. It's a tool that's pretty popular for creating 2D and 3D animations. So as I'm learning about geometry nodes, I realized there's so much you can do with this node system. I've seen amazing abstract and procedural projects that have been really inspiring, and although I'm still wrapping my head around it, just like with most things in Blender, I've had a lot of fun doing some experiments. So starting with the concept, I wanted to create something bright, colorful, and exciting, and I previously thought of a city scene with lights and floating lanterns, and I thought that idea might actually work for this. The first thing I created were the buildings. I remember seeing these amazing demonstrations of procedural buildings here made with geometry nodes by Felipe Del Rio and was inspired to learn how to achieve that. To help, I referenced two tutorials from Kammerbild and Chong3D to understand the logic behind this and how to set this up. I also looked at Felipe Del Rio's demo file that you can actually download from the official Blender website. I suggest looking into these resources if you're interested, and I'll leave a link to them below. I started by doing some initial building tests on a live stream by recreating the node setup. I wanted to experiment and deconstruct the logic behind it, and doing it this way was really helpful in understanding how the nodes fit together and make sense to create a structure. Then, with that knowledge, I was able to build upon it and customize the buildings to my liking. To summarize the process, you basically create the side of the building first, create duplicates for the other sides, orient them accordingly, and assemble them together with geometry nodes. So I started with creating the individual parts of the buildings by modeling these 1x1 panels that make up the bottom, middle, and top floors. I also created variations of these panels to give the building some diversity. So here I have the bottom floor, middle floor, top floor, and roof panels. Then I have the corner and other elements that fit with those assets. I wanted the buildings to look like this when assembled together. With the building parts done, I brought in another mesh to house our geometry node building setup. Within the setup, I added a mesh primitive grid and instanced one of the panels, and in this case the middle floor panel, at each point. Then I used a transform node and some math nodes to adjust the size and spacing to eventually resemble a wall. Using more nodes, I was able to specify the other panels in their respective positions, like the bottom floor, top row, roof, etc. And once I had a side completed, I duplicated the setup within the node tree to create the other sides and combine them to make a complete and resizable structure. To diversify the panels, I instanced collections instead of one object, which allowed me to randomize them by adjusting the seed values. So the node setup got pretty complicated, but in taking my time with it, I realized that most of these are mathematical operations, and that really helped in piecing things together. Once I had the setup completed, I applied some simple tune, emission, and outline shaders, and then I duplicated the setup to populate the scene with more buildings. The next thing were these lanterns between the buildings. These were created and animated using grease pencil and then instanced along a curved mesh. For this, I used the brushes pack by Daniel Martinez Lara. I think you can actually access these brushes from within the program inside your grease pencil object. If you go to Active Tool and Workspace Settings, then go to the drop down here, you can select Download and Import Texture Brush Pack. I selected the leaves brush, filled my lantern with it, and went over it with the tint tool in order to get the gradient look I was going for. Then I added some subtle animations, modifiers, and effects. Once I had one, I created duplicates and grouped them into a collection. To create the different colors, I applied hue and saturation modifiers on those duplicates. To get the string here, I brought in a Bezier curve and duplicated it. The original grid had bevel depth and was the visible string that connected from one building to the other. The duplicate was converted into a mesh so I could instance the lantern collection using geometry nodes. Then I used the same process to create the other lantern variations and the main lanterns with my avatar and Maxwell, my dog. The string lights on the buildings were created very similarly to the lanterns, except much easier. I just created different colored emissive spheres and grouped them into a collection. Then I instanced the collection onto the Bezier curve meshes that hung from the buildings using geometry nodes. To randomize the lights, I animated the seed value within the node setup. For the clouds, there's two different variations, both done in grease pencil. One has a blur modifier on it to look atmospheric, and the other one does not. Both of them, however, do have glow and room effects applied and are at varying opacities. For the floating lanterns, I created them using grease pencil as well, with some subtle animation and grease pencil effects. The important thing here is that I wanted to have some lanterns in the foreground, a little bit blurry, and then some in the back. To achieve that, I created two collections of the floating lanterns. The grease pencil objects in one collection had a blur modifier applied using depth of field, and the other one did not. Then I created two different particle systems. The foreground system would instance the blurred collection, and the background system would instance the other. For the Starfield and fireworks, these were done using geometry nodes, and these assets were actually taken directly from the 4th of July piece I made a few weeks ago. The fireworks were created using grease pencil elements instanced along a UV sphere, and the Starfield is a plane instancing an emissive sphere that uses a UV map to affect the scale attribute so it looks like it's rippling. If you'd like to learn more about how I did this, you can reference that video and I'll leave a link below. The trees were created using the sapling tree generator. This is a free add-on in Blender that you can install really easily. To do this, go up to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, and search Sapling Tree Gen. Once you check the option, you can bring in some trees. If you Shift A, go to Curve, go to Sapling Tree Gen, you'll bring in a sapling object. The options in the bottom left allow you to make adjustments to the geometry, change the tree itself, add leaves, etc. There's lots you can do with this tool. I believe the trees I used were a Japanese maple with leaves on it. I just copied the material from the string so that they were subtle. To intensify some of the grease pencil effects, I did add some coloring and glare nodes. And that's it for this piece. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much to everyone that has supported me this far. Honestly, I never expected to get this far with my channel. I initially started this last year as a way to document learning new creative skills like drawing, Blender, machine learning, and really, I can't believe it's been a year, which is crazy. But it's been so much fun sharing that learning journey with you guys, with new creations and experiments, and I'm just so grateful for the support. And I'm really excited about creating more things for the future. If you guys have any questions or need help on any of my tutorials, feel free to leave a comment or reach out to me on Instagram. Thanks again, and see you guys next time.